Elias, CCAC member.
Copies.
Mayor Gallo.
Mike Kunkel, CCAC member.
You want to continue?
Jim Duncan, Crozet.
D.D. Sanders, Crozet.
Mark Wall, Oldville, Crozet.
Ryan Day, Emerald Ridge.
Saturday, Crozet.
Whitney Black, Crozet, resident.
Bill Fritz, I work with the Community Development Department.
L.J. Lopez, Milestone Partners.
Greg Scharer from Perrone Robotics.
Matt Henry, resident, Crozet.
Paul Grady, Meacham's River.
Tim Colson, Crozet. Eric Wallace, Crozet Gazette.
Perrone, Crozet.
Jim Crosby.
Dan Mahon, Crozet, County Parks and Greenway.
I'm Allie from the Crozet Gazette, Allie Pesh.
I'm Josh Mandel from Charlottesville tomorrow.
Well, welcome everybody. I'm glad you could join us. There are extra copies of agendas and handouts over the red table here. If anybody wants one, I don't know if I have enough for everybody. There's extras there. With that, let's jump in. Agenda was circulated over the weekend. Comments, suggestions, changes. All good as is. We're good? All right, 2 minutes. Minutes were from the November meeting were distributed. Did you get a chance to look at them? Comments, thoughts, changes, suggestions? If not, can I have a motion for somebody to approve?
Move to approve.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, that was the November minutes. The October, we've been remiss in getting those back out with the correct looking names, so I'm just going to still table those, and we'll do that next time around. You'll see those shortly. That's minutes. With that, let's jump into our first item. We just talked about this and introduced this topic last meeting a little bit. L.J. Lopez from Milestone Partners is here to do a brief public informational meeting about a Proffer amendment that's being proposed for the Barnes Lumber project. Predominantly to accommodate a new business there, but I'll let you speak to that if you'd like to.
Sure, great.
I also mentioned that Bill Fritz from the planning staff, who's the lead staff person on this, is here also to answer questions as well.
Great. Dave, thanks for having me. Apologies on Frank Stoner's behalf. He's been more the face of Milestone Partners and our downtown Barnes Lumber redevelopment. He's at a County Board of Supervisors meeting this evening, and so couldn't be here with you all. So apologies for that, but I'm here, and it's somewhat appropriate. It feels like we're coming full circle, because when we first introduced Barnes Lumber, it was here at the Meadows, what is now a couple years ago. It's good to see a lot of familiar faces. We've made a lot of developments and progress on the project. I'll touch on just a little bit of that. The open house event with Mahon Reichel, what was it, last week. We've digested those comments and compiled those. Those are out, actually just received and hot off the presses late this afternoon. So we're making progress with that and the Crozet Park planning, and so more information on that will come out. Frank wanted me just to relay that piece of info to you. But we're here tonight just to talk about the Proffer amendment that is, well, really rezoning for Proffer amendment on the current parcel, which expands the uses to accommodate a exciting user that is interested in a, long-term, in the long-term business of Crozet and the vision of Barnes Lumber, Perrone Robotics. And so Greg Scharer is here with Perrone to talk about and answer any questions, technical questions relative to their organization, what they do, and the intended use of the property. I point out just a couple things, and I'm here largely to answer any questions. I think this was preliminarily discussed at the last meeting, so you all are aware there's a draft resolution, so no need to kind of rehash what's already been discussed. This is really a short-term means to a long-term vision, in that there are current restrictions on the use of the property, so this expands those uses that are consistent with the comprehensive plan. Supports Perrone's use in the short term and allows for the current and parallel path of the larger Phase 1 Barnes Lumber, which has been an ongoing discussion, the commercial redevelopment of that Phase 1 and the park plan. So really I'll turn it over to Greg to talk about Perrone, their company, and the intended use for the property.
Thanks everybody for having us tonight. We're happy to be here to talk about this, what we consider to be a very exciting opportunity. Just briefly, Perrone Robotics is a software company that makes the software that can make cars drive by themselves. We see what we do is critical for creating a safer world in the future. Cars will not have as many fatalities when they're driven by computers. We're very confident about that. And our company is a high-tech company that employs right now 15 people in the area. We're going to be doubling our staff over the next 12 months. These are great high-paying jobs for engineers, developers, testers, and other people who could help us take the software that we're creating and test it in vehicles to make sure it's indeed safe for putting in cars in the future. Our business involves writing software, testing the cars on the test track, very low impact, quiet, non-destructive testing. There's no crashes or anything like that to worry about. And we're just excited to be in the Crozet area because this has been my home, Albemarle County, for 45 of my 46 years. And my boss, the founder of Perrone Robotics, Paul Perrone, has been here for 15 years, working in the area, working more in Charlottesville because he hasn't had a chance to find the right space here in Crozet. And he's really happy to be able to sort of come closer to home and be able to work just down the road from his house. We see the opportunity here as to continue to develop our business, which we recently got some great funding from Intel Capital to build. But also we see the opportunity to bring other companies that are symbiotic to our business to the area. We want to create a technology corridor, greater than just what we are, of course, that brings in more people, makes it easier for us to attract good talent, and raises the whole tide of the county and the general area. So we'd love to get your approval on making this move forward, and we're committed to being in the area for a long time. Thank you very much. Happy to answer any questions.
What was your name? I'm hard of hearing.
Oh, it's Greg Scharer, S-C-H-A-R-E-R. Yes, sir.
Questions, anybody?
Where are you currently located?
We are going to bring in, to start with, a 60 by 84 foot modular structure that will be about 5,000 square feet of office space, and we're going to reuse some of the older spaces for storing the vehicles and doing our mechanical work.
And then in terms of like long-term employees, how many people do you envision 5, 10 years out?
Well, that's tough. You put me on the spot.
Best case scenario.
Best case scenario. Listen, we have big aspirations to be the Microsoft of cars, the product, the operating system that runs all the cars of the future. Whether we achieve that full vision or some subset of that, we're going to be growing at least a doubling every year for the next 3 or 4 years we see. So with our funding partners and with our growth plan, we would easily be 120 people at the end of 4 years. Could be more, could be a lot more.
The structure you're putting in, modular structure, is that going to be your permanent structure? I mean, you're not making plans that will turn into something different later?
We really haven't gotten that far, to be quite honest. We would like to ultimately have a little more permanent building, but this is something that meets our need of getting testing going quickly and keeping our development moving as we grow our business rapidly.
So I'll dovetail on
Please.
that. That's really the modular structure is a means to serve their short-term need and get them in Crozet and located because they've bought into the long-term vision. And while we're working through the larger planning effort, from a rezoning to DCD, the road network, the uses, and the rezoning that's been tabled and reinitiated and tabled and reinitiated, until that is resolved and we were able to build and make permanent plans, they would then pivot from the modular space, the 5,000 square feet at whatever point, and projecting forward whatever, to build a long-term permanent commercial structure that would house their business for the long term.
We'd love to do that. This is an area that, again, my wife's family lives in the original 3-notch road, and they've been there for 9 generations. The able, the young, the cars. We want to be here. We love this area. So, I'm sorry.
Where are these cars going to drive? I hope not on 3-notch road. It's very dangerous.
That one S-curve, or the curve there, is truly a death trap. We'd love to see that fixed.
But I mean, where are you going to be doing the testing?
Well, there's space now that's pretty much grown over underdeveloped space. Besides porta potties, there's nothing there.
Oh, okay.
So we're going to utilize, so it's going to be utilized on the existing site. There.
We're going to use them for obstacles.
Right, there.
That's safer than 3-notch road.
Right.
It is.
They'll be testing parallel parking in between those. So it's it will be a track that will utilize the existing kind of navigation throughout the existing structures that are on site, again on a temporary basis until there's a longer-term road network in which testing would happen within the road network of downtown.
But speaking of original 3-notch road, those deadly curves, those are problems that will solve with autonomous vehicles, because cars can see around the corner in the future.
Well, I'm worried about you hitting the bikes.
We can hit bikes too. We'll make signals.
Yeah, that's a question I have. I'm the greenway planner for the county and also live here in Crozet. The Crozet connector trail that we're looking for connecting to the library all the way through the community to Western Ridge and all beyond. We would still want to be able to find a way of incorporating that into whatever plans.
Again, the rezoning and Proffer amendment is really a short-term use to expand the use.
Right.
They're going to locate in a modular structure with a temporary track, and that permanent greenway has been a part of the ongoing discussion of the full rezone plan and remains as such. So
I just had to speak up for
Sure, absolutely.
You spoke with symbiotic businesses. Do you have any leads, or have you spoken with any other companies that are thinking about maybe joining you?
Well, we have. We have looked very seriously at putting an office in the Silicon Valley area because that's where everybody goes, right? But there's serious problems working there. It's very hard to keep employees. And when I tell stories to my friends and peers who have companies in Silicon Valley, and I say, hey, I don't have to worry about people being stolen by every other company, they immediately ask, well, where can we move that will have that same sort of protection of our employee base? But more seriously, a company called ABD, Anthony Best Dynamics, outside of London, is very interested in setting up a facility here. They make driving robots that would be something that's complementary to our business. We're also working with a company called ATIS that makes another software product complementary to our business. And one of the Intel subsidiaries called Wind River has expressed an interest in setting up an office in this area as well. That's a multi-billion-dollar company that could very easily be much larger than we are with our presence here very quickly. We're looking forward to that.
And would our infrastructure support that at this point?
In the city today, I don't know the answer to that. It would be a struggle, but with the vision of 3 years from now, it's a very different story. So I think the things that are being done now are stepping stones and foundation to support that sort of future Silicon Valley opportunity that the county has here.
Greg, I have one question. First, I wanted to just reiterate, thanks for being here tonight. It's really good to have you here, not only tonight, but it's good to hopefully have you in Crozet. I guess my question, we've talked a lot about, with Milestone, about redevelopment of barns, and we've talked about economic development, and what can Crozet do, and what can the county do to spur economic development on that site. I'm curious, what is really bringing, why are you coming to Barnes? Is it primarily the local connection and physically, want to locate in this area? Or are there other attributes of Barnes that just fit well for you guys right now?
It's a combination of a lot of factors. Certainly the property being potentially available for us, if we can move this proper amendment through, is an important consideration. The vision of where Crozet is going is a city is very important to us. I'm attracting relatively youthful employees, 30-ish, 25-year-old people who want to be able to walk from their work to get goods and services. They want to be able to go spend their money at a restaurant and socialize with their work and other friends very easily. And we see that the hub that Crozet is becoming is an opportunity for attracting people. We also see that there's a great set of laws in Virginia for supporting autonomous driving, and that's another reason to stay in the state, not so much here, but in the state per se. And we do have a lot of local ties, as I mentioned, in both myself and in Paul and others in the organization. And I think the willingness of the city to, pardon me, the county to work with us has also been very, very instrumental in our desire to move forward. When I first heard about this opportunity from Frank, I said, I'm skeptical you'll ever get this done. But despite what I sense as people frustration at times that things don't move faster, I'm still very impressed at how the city, part of the county, has been able to work with us so far. So it's all of the above.
Just, you were saying projecting possibly 100 employees in the next 5 years. Would this turn into a North Fork Research Park where you've got a building and then the parking lot to accommodate 100 employees spans well over the building size? If you drive through North Fork Research Park in northern Albemarle County, the majority of the space is parking lots. What's the plan for parking? If your company's projecting possibly 100 employees within 5 years, and you're trying to bring on more companies, which will more employees, will this just become a North Fork Research Park construction community?
So by ultimate zoning that would be approved under DCD, it would preclude it from becoming a North Fork Research Park by the inherent zoning. Parking has been identified as an issue that needs to be comprehensively and collaboratively addressed because the pattern of development and what's desired to not become North Fork Research Park requires, for the intensity of development, what we believe over the long term to accommodate 120 businesses, and if the other 3 businesses that Greg just mentioned end up wanting to locate here too, with 120 employees, one, we're all hoping they're walking or biking because they're living in the area, but 2, there will be some associated cars with that, and then there's the retail and restaurant, which is required by that zoning code, and also some residential within the 20 acres that are there. There will be a parking issue that needs to be addressed over the long term. In the short term, as it's developed out by phase, it can largely be, I think, accommodated by surface park, but over the long-term vision, it's likely going to need to be structured park, and that's going to serve not just one individual business, that's going to serve the larger downtown district, and so it needs to be a more comprehensive solution.
Do you have any images or drawings of what this modular structure would look like?
We do. I don't know if we have them with us.
We do. I don't have any available to share, but we can certainly follow up and share. And maybe, Dave, if we send those to you as a follow-up, they could be distributed in meeting minutes or made publicly available.
Is it essentially like a modular trailer office
yeah. So
office complex, or like trailers like you see at the school?
The best visual comparable that if you think about the modular trailers that are helping to support the overflow in the school system and buffer the students, that would be, but you'd have a couple of them sandwiched together to create the 5,000 square feet, and those individual classrooms are likely smaller than that.
And physically, where on the site are those conceived to be right now?
It's conceived to be near the Pink Warehouse, so if you are on 240, you'd see the Pink Warehouse right across from kind of Great Value, and it would be in and around adjacent to that as a 5,000 square foot structure, and then the track would be, you know, adjacent and proximate to that as a loop system, you know, throughout the balance of the property.
Is there going to be some kind of time frame for how long they can stay there, the modular units?
I don't know that there's a time limit. Our expectation is that it's a short term, and I think Perrone Robotics would agree with that. They max out 5,000 square feet on the growth rate that they're at pretty quickly. And so I think that really creates a sense of urgency for all of us involved to begin, get an approval and begin executing and implementing such that we have permanent space that accommodates not just Perrone Robotics, but the other assets and amenities and park infrastructure that we want for downtown Crozet. So, Bill, I don't know if you want to offer anything on with the zoning proffer amendment, it would not come with it a time, a sunset clause, to my knowledge.
I'm Bill Fritz, I work with the Community Development Department. So just to let everyone know what the process is and what's going on and what the actual proffer is that we have. So there's going to be a joint meeting of the Planning Commission and the Board of Supervisors next Wednesday at 6 o'clock at the County Office Building on McIntyre, where the rezoning application will be heard. Back in the 90s, there was a rezoning on this property, and it established proffers that largely limited the activity of the property to wood-related things. There were a couple other things, but primarily it was wood-related stuff. And what the applicant is proposing to do is to add research and development, industrial offices, offices inside of existing buildings as permitted uses. If you look at the proffers, you'll also notice it talks about temporary construction offices and temporary construction yards, and those are things that they actually have to add, because if they don't add them, they can't actually build anything. So it's a quirk of the ordinance. So when you see that, don't think it allows the actual building activity to occur. That's all it's doing. And it keeps all the old proffers too. And we are viewing this as an interim use between what the property is now, which is essentially underutilized and is not going to be used for the things that are currently proffered. I mean, somebody's not going to put a lumber yard there. So it's an interim use between net for now until such time as they perfect the Crozet Square development that they've been talking about for a number of years. So that's what this is envisioned to be.
Is there a height restriction with the current zoning proffer that you guys have?
It's just the standard one that's in the zoning ordinance. There's
Right,
nothing
standard
different.
HI height restriction.
Yep.
Which is what is it?
I believe the maximum building height is still 65 feet, but special regulations go into place if you're over 30 feet. And I'm doing this from memory, but I think that's where you have to increase your setbacks.
Modular structure we're talking about is one story. Yeah.
And one of the things that we've talked about with them, they haven't mentioned this, but one of the things we talked about them with where they're talking about siting it, it actually wouldn't be visible from 240, which means it would not be subject to the entrance corridor regulations. If they were to locate it somewhere else on the property that was visible from 240, then the building would also have to be reviewed for its impact on the entrance corridor.
Do you have any sense if the final home for this is going to be falling in phase 1, 2, or 3? How this is split for future designs?
I think it's likely to occur within phase 1, from the space and the plan and their time frame. And again, we all heard the staffing projections. 5,000 square feet is going to get cramped in a hurry. So with that in mind, we're moving as fast as we can with an expectation that it's incorporated within phase 1. that may adjust based on a variety of different factors, but I think that's the current thinking.
From my perspective, it's going to help me get better employees out of a better building. So while I'm remarkably impressed with how good these structures look, it's going to look even better to my new team as we get a permanent structure.
Yeah.
No questions? Anybody? Yeah.
So what you're supporting or voting to support is not just this one building, but other buildings like this for the property. Is that correct?
Well,
I mean, this proffer is not exclusive to your company. It's going to encompass other people who want to come and put light industrial type properties as well there.
It would permit, if someone else came in there and wanted to do other sort of research and development kind of things, that they would be able to utilize the property for that, yes.
Okay.
And it would allow the, correct me if I'm wrong here, misstating this, it would allow the use, but any other industries or businesses that fell within those uses that were located there, and for example, if they were going to build a permanent building on the project, on that site, would still require
There's still other
site
review.
plan approval
Right.
and all the normal
Right.
approvals
Right.
that you would go through. It's not like just with this one approval, they can start throwing up whatever buildings they want on the site. That's,
There's other administrative reviews that occur, and if it's within the entrance corridor district, if it's visible from the entrance corridor district, there's that review also.
is this, would these uses all be included within the current, the way the DCD is currently envisioned?
They could do
So,
that.
so once the contemplated change from HI to DCD is done, these uses all fit within the DCD?
Their activity could continue, yes. And it's important to note that it's a proffer amendment. It's still going to be zoned HI, heavy industry, but we're not actually, or they're not proposing to add any manufacturing in the industrial, any new industrial type of activities. It's office and research development type activities.
Other questions? Comments?
When you said that you could foresee something besides the modular structure incorporated into phase one, is that what you said? That would be likely that would happen in phase one?
Perrone's permanent
Their
permanent
space.
location, so they would outgrow the modular structure. That would go away, and it is located in the vicinity of the phase two area. So outside of phase one, they would build and construct the permanent structure based on timing and staffing needs and the desire to attract, more staff. They would have a permanent structure within the phase one, currently contemplated phase one area that we've been discussing.
Okay, so what we've been seeing for phase one and that concept and those sort of layouts and drawings might change if it were to incorporate this type of use into phase one and not into the phase two part. Would you like sort of expand what your phase one?
The illustrative buildings that are shown there, one of those would house their office complex and that use. So the phase one layout plan, the park, the location, all the work that Mahon Reichel is doing remains unchanged. They just plug into one of those components that's, best suited for their needs and their organization. And the track may remain as part of phase two until such time that additional road infrastructure is built, and then it shifts to hard surface, road infrastructure and testing within parking lot travelways and, such in the downtown area. But, so I hope that answers your question.
Yes. I guess I just imagine phase one having some of the things we've heard about, like a hotel, like a smaller hotel, or some of the businesses that might be attracted there and the civic space that's being worked on, and then having uses like this happening more in phase two. Not necessarily the office part, but the part that would store cars or track for testing and things like that, that wouldn't necessarily fit with, having restaurants or businesses in phase one part.
I think the beauty and flexibility of the DCD zoning is that they can all coexist together if we get the right infrastructure plan. And I think we've made a lot of great strides towards that through the community engagement process from a year ago with community input. Mahan Reichel's come in and overlaid within the space allocations of that road and infrastructure network from a park planning perspective and how those uses orient around that to create the downtown and civic space that we're looking for. Just as easily as a hotel can plug into one of those buildings and that hotel could shift and still create and facilitate the same experience that we're looking for, so too could an office building in phase 1 or in phase 2. And so I think that's the beauty that the comprehensive plan afforded through the DCD zoning is that flexibility. I think there's height, it's a minimum 2-story, no residential on the first floor. This wouldn't be residential, so it would meet those and would certainly, I think, be a value add to phase 1 and would not want to wait on phase 2 because we would, as a community, benefit from 15 now, so 5 years, you do the math on that, let's just say 75 employees showing up every day, occupying in, downtown Crozet. I think that's really powerful.
I think it's really exciting that you mentioned one of the appeals of this location was that willingness to be flexible and to work with you guys to move this along, because I think especially in your industry and research and development and tech, that things do move quickly. All of a sudden, you're working all these years and then suddenly, boom, it's starting to move, and I think that could bode well for our community if we show an openness to flexing with newcomers, people that are bringing jobs and that want to come here because they do like the idea of being able to walk and bike and take advantage of the trails and the parks. And I lived in the San Francisco area for a while, and it's very difficult financially for young families, and it's just
worse,
crazy expensive, and we have everything that I think those families would want here. Great local food and great community, so I hope that this moves really swiftly and smoothly for all of us. I think it's a great thing to bring jobs and not just gift stores. It's great.
Thank you.
If we can, unless there's other specific questions, I'm going to segue from Charles' presentation. Thank you very much.
I'll make one other point on that. I think that there's a lot of synergies as you raised. It's great that a business wants to locate here, so it's not just gift shops or retail. Retail and commercial businesses are supported by residential rooftops, and also commercial businesses or professional businesses and office space from 9 to 5. Those employees need a place to eat lunch, during the daytime. And so there's a lot of great synergies inherent in that, in creating that vibrant downtown that we've been talking about for so long. So we see it as a tremendous opportunity.
It's not just our employees. We've hosted 140 visitors this year to our Charlottesville office. Almost all of those spent hotel nights, ate at restaurants, bought souvenirs to take home to their families.
We'll need at least one of those.
We're an economic engine, as we see it, for the community, and the community and the engine work together to power the car.
I just have one last thing I wanted to talk about for a minute is, and I think the missing part for me of all of this is that I don't know how much consideration has been given throughout this process to the residents of Hilltop Street in Crozet. In the last 2 weeks, I've gotten a letter from Mr. Stoner in Elmore County talking about the zoning change and this proffer. And, with most of you talking here are going to be not directly affected by this, but the people that live on Hilltop Street will be. Some of these buildings will be in our backyards. The traffic, I know it's all, we don't know where it's going yet, but I'm afraid of where it's going. It's already bad. And I, you know, I get here and I see where you enthusiastically want to support this. And I also know as a group that in the past, that when things come up, you often ask for the input of adjoining neighbors to a property that's going to be rezoned or changed or whatever. And I haven't seen that from this group at all. So I came tonight to just, you know, let them feel to be known about it. And there's a lot that's going to be going on, and I think that we're due some consideration.
I think part of probably what's happened too is because of the nature of the timeline that people are working under, which is sort of unusual for, you know, trying to respond to the needs of the applicant to get to a space. Things have moved along faster, but you've gotten the notification, and that's what this meeting is for us to hear from you. Like what you just said, that we're still trying to let that process play out, where we have that community meeting and the group gets to hear from neighbors and hear from your perspective and concerns that we might not be aware of. So that is why we're here tonight, and we certainly want to hear those things. And even though the Planning Commission and the board will have a joint session, which is a little different than we might normally have two separate meetings, there's still that public comment is a part of that meeting as well. And that's next week. It's just, things are moving along a little bit faster, so I certainly can understand where you're coming from, but I don't want that to make it seem as though we're still not interested in the impacts that you might see or worry about in your community, your neighborhoods. We need to hear and know that, because like you said, we may not be aware of that, and that's why having people show up to let us know that's so important.
With the current downtown design, I can't recall some of the different drawings, but what kind of buffer are we talking about between what gets developed downtown and hilltop of the neighborhood back that way? Does anybody remember?
Well, it was discussed a lot when Frank Stone first came here to develop that property. We were very concerned about the neighborhood park,
Parkside Village.
Parkside Village and Hilltop. And I think there was a lot of input from the members of those communities when we first proposed it, because one of the issues was we wanted more commercial property and Frank wanted more residential property, and it was actually the community members, the adjoining community members, who said, you know, you might want commercial property in that piece of land, but we don't want it to be bordering on our property right here. So that was discussed at that time.
Can you speak to that at all, about buffers along that edge?
So there was I'll try and go through as quickly as possible the kind of the history and the evolution of that. There was a transect running north-south across the site with kind of higher intensity and density uses, shifting to the south so that it backs up to the residents on Hilltop, to a lower density and residential use, because it was anticipated that that would be a concern. There was also a public sentiment in that this is downtown Crozet, and this is one of the last pieces to be able to afford I think the extent of commercial uses and business uses that is desired for the long-term vision of Crozet. And so there was some tension there early on in the amount of residential that was proposed, and at the time, the lack of commercial and office that was provided for. And so fast forward to where we are today, we focused on a road network that would accommodate all uses, which is hopefully less contentious. It's, you know, just how do we navigate through the site, and what we put where, we can figure out as we go along. And we scaled back from an entire property rezoning to a phase one rezoning, because we could all agree that in phase one, closest to the current square, we wanted to extend mixed use, commercial, retail, office, and residential above those uses on the first floor. So that seemed like that was a natural progression for us to proceed. And we included the civic space, which is integral and vital to Crozet as a community and the ultimate development and long-term vision. You have to demonstrate that on day one. That can't be Perrone Robotics is not interested in moving there in the absence of that, because that's vital and key to attracting their employees and generating that vision. So that's where we've ended up. Phase 1 does not back up to Hilltop. That's future Phase 2. And that, I guess, discussion can continue, ongoing as to what is the right density and use along that transect running from north-south, from the railroad tracks to, what backs up to Hilltop. So what was to the back as a buffer were residential backyards, backing up to residential backyards. Where that, goes in the future, I think, is open for continued discussion, because what will come next is Phase 1, and Phase 1 doesn't get into that discussion.
And I would just add, first of all, I second what Jim said. This is what we're trying to do tonight, is have people understand what the proposals are and get that input. I think given this Proffer amendment, as LJ said, we will still be looking at and evaluating both the Phase 1 and the Phase 2 rezoning, which will include, the road network and proposed uses along that corridor. And I think, as LJ said, it has been at least thus far, I wouldn't say contentious, but a debated topic about should that area be preserved more for expanded commercial use, or should there be a bigger residential buffer there? So I think that's going to continue to be worked out, particularly in Phase 2 rezoning, if and when that comes.
Like I said, I understand, I just again, it's like, I don't think we've had any input from our perspective. And I understand that this is a rush, but when we get to Phase 3, someone's going to come along and say, well, if we don't do it tonight, then it's not going to happen, so let's go ahead and vote for it. I don't know. If there's something said for doing things in a rush, and something said that for considering it and taking other people into consideration instead of just one group. And I'll see that.
I understand what you're saying, but my sense is that, how long, when did Frank first bring this up? 2 years ago? 3 years ago. So for 3 years, we were dealing with this. And I would say during the first year, it was our primary business. And we did attend to those issues. And at that time, there was a possibility somebody was going to build air turbines in there or something. So it's been considered, and we're still considering. We're not going to try to jump on the people who live in Hilltop and shock them. In fact, we would probably be happy if you would have people coming to most of our meetings when we discuss these issues, because the input from existing communities has had a tremendous impact on a few of the decisions we've made.
Yeah, I just, I haven't seen the latest plan, but we've been advocating that the Greenway corridor, which would be not only a bike ped connection from Parkside Village to the library, to the community, would also incorporate a buffer along the Hilltop neighborhood, the backside of the neighborhood, is one way of sort of softening that. And that was in the early plan. I don't know, I haven't seen the most recent, but that made a lot of sense. Mm-hmm. And it was one way of protecting the neighborhood somewhat, and also providing access. The other thing I just want to mention, when the lumberyard was active, there was a lot of traffic, a lot of trucks coming in, a lot of noise. Actually, when they fired that thing up, there were sometimes my house. I live right miles away. Yeah, I live right back there too. And I'm just curious. I mean, thinking back on what the former impact of that site when it was actively used, how different this might be something to consider too. Because it wasn't a quiet place. I mean, there was a lot of activity back there.
Trucks were like,
The trucks wasn't that bad.
It was the whatever that noise was.
All we had on there was forklifts, And when they unload logs and stuff like that, when they dropped them off up there, just dropped the side and dropped the logs off, that's when they made noise, but other than that,
Well, this will probably be pretty quiet, but
yeah, but it never bothered us.
the one question I would make sure I cleared with the community is robotic cars. I can see some folks, some folks come from a generation that robots always go wrong. And this idea of vehicles run amok in the neighborhood, all over the place, chasing people around. Are we going to be crash test dummies walking around for robotic cars? That's a question you just need to flesh out.
No, it's a
because the
great
community is
question.
going to have that.
Yeah, if I may speak to that directly, we have a huge premium on safety. It would be traumatic for our business if we were to hurt someone, our employees or someone in the community. So our testing protocols, first of all, we only put the software in the car for testing extensively in simulation environments, so on computers. And then we put the software in the car, we test it. It has a whole variety of safety controls around it. The first of it, which is that if you leave the road you're designed to be on, the car shuts off. The second is that we have a human in the car at all times with a what's called a dead man switch in their hand.
That's important.
And as soon as they let go of the button, the car stops. We also have a remote control capability stopping the vehicle as well. So there's an operator in the car, there's an observer who's watching the car with another dead man switch. And we've already tested it ahead of time, so we've never had an incident a single time over 13 years of testing this software.
How many vehicles would you be testing at any one time?
No more than 2. Well, let me rephrase. 2 is our maximum today.
Yeah.
With some of our roundabout testing, we might get to 3.
Okay. Those are questions that I can hear coming from the community already.
Very good. Thank you.
Yeah, the other question, Proffer amendment applies to the whole property, not just to phase 1, because I saw that that's a strike through in this proposed draft, right?
Again, because the current proposed use and where it's located is not within the phase 1 area. So the modular storage and the testing track facility is within phase 2. So it afforded the opportunity to locate it where the use wants to be located, not arbitrarily within phase 1. And it allowed the use to exist while phase 1 was under development and creating, so it didn't then have to go find another new home.
Right now, it's just one parcel. Phase 1 is entirely theoretical.
Right, I just saw that here, where
Yep.
phase 1 was strike through.
Phase 1 doesn't exist.
No, that's, again, a great question.
How big is the track going to be? You may have said that before, I apologize.
We have not formalized the design, but it's about 2,800 feet in total length. So it's an oval with some crosses and features in the middle to simulate intersections and a roundabout.
Okay.
Would it be a newly constructed paved track or essentially utilize the existing surface?
It's going to utilize the existing surface and travel ways that are out there and obstructions and barriers from the old former lumber infrastructure. So what we will do is, from a layout standpoint, it'll follow that and utilize it. We will resurface, add aggregate stone to that so that it's a drivable, less off-road condition, if you will.
There's a lot of skateboard hazards.
Again,
Just one comment.
Sure.
We're dealing with heavy industry zoning. Here's an opportunity to bring research and development with a set of professional jobs and just exactly what this committee's been talking about for years. The very nature of this kind of business is such an incredible asset to this community. And because this industry is coming in, we're preventing something like a coke plant or something, something really awful. I mean, the old industry that was there, as was stated, you could hear it 2.5 miles away. We're talking about something that's quiet, safe, high-tech, futuristic, long-term employment. It's just exactly what we need to ground the future of our downtown. And I just think somebody needed to say that.
anything's gotta be an improvement over the superstructure that's there now.
I'll go back, because I don't know, I said 3 years, maybe because it feels like 3 years, maybe it's 2, so I don't want to misspeak. It's been a while that we've been involved with Mr. Scharer and Mr. Lopez, and we've come.
Say it feels like 5.
We were meeting here then.
It was-
In any case,
Right.
it's been a long, involved process. These are all public meetings, and, you know, Mr. Stoner and his team did a series of charrettes or, you know, open house forums.
True public engagement.
Yeah, there are a lot of public engagement, and I would just encourage people so you don't feel like, well, where did this come from? You know, to try to tap into those resources. I know it's hard to go to all these meetings, but any email list you can get involved in, and any of the meetings that you can go to, or network with people who can go and report back to you. I think that's really essential, because we're gonna see more of that. We're seeing that now with the DCI showing, you know, these are some examples of what the civic space might look like, and asking for input there. And so these are all opportunities for the community to be engaged, and that might not appeal to one set of people as much as it appeals to another, but I feel like we are trying to offer, and the applicant's trying to offer a lot of opportunities to get feedback, and I think the choice to go in phases was to make sure, you know, by taking it off in smaller chunks, there could be that opportunity to really make sure we're moving forward carefully and making those right choices and getting that feedback from the community. And again, phase 1, you know, doesn't touch on those neighborhoods as much, and that was a huge part of our conversation in the beginning when we were talking about development that might touch on the neighborhoods. And then the last thing I'll say is, just to be clear, the master plan does identify this space as very critical for commercial development, and sort of what the gentleman just said, this is exactly the kind of thing, you know, we'd like to see happen in the space, and the space is identified in the master plan as, for those people who live around it, should be aware of that's a big chunk of what we have left in the village of Crozet in downtown. And so I think just, you know, be aware of all, I mean, I've learned a lot about some of the property around where I live, that things I didn't know, and I won't work in the view one more time in a meeting. But I've just learn about what's around you, and what, if there's a big empty field, learn about it, figure it out.
And plant some trees.
Yeah,
You know, plant some
learn what the master
rose
plan calls
trees.
for.
species.
Yeah. So learn what you know, what people, what the Web Master Plan is saying should and may happen in these areas, and then any opportunity you have to become engaged in the community to help guide that and the vision that you see for Crozet. I would encourage everyone to take those opportunities whenever they can.
Again, I think we need to segue here. And what I'm going to add to that is, this is by no means the last conversation about Barnes and Noble. Phase 1 rezoning, there will be a phase 2 rezoning, there will be a plaza design process. So I think there'll be, you know, ongoing dialogue about a number of these issues. I guess what I wanted to do is segue to the group now. Leslie was kind enough to, in anticipation of this discussion, and based on our discussion at the last meeting, where people generally felt like they were, you know, favorably opposed to saying something positive about this kind of development, Leslie drafted a resolution. It was circulated. There's an amended resolution that I circulated, sorry, but late today. Again, the change is primarily intended to make it clear that we're talking about the Proffer amendment to accommodate the use that we're talking about, not the phase 1 rezoning. Again, this is not the phase 1 rezoning. That will be a separate discussion that we have at a later time. So I guess I just wanted to ask the CCAC members if people had comments, suggestions, changes on the draft resolution.
Sorry, I got in trouble with the connection.
mainly accomplishes what we hoped in the beginning as far as opening the property up for originally thought.
For this use.
But this, I mean, this is just one of the kinds of organizations we hope to put it to.
Right.
I like that as is.
Any other, if you want a chance to look at it, any other comments? Discussion? Please, go ahead. Thanks, Reggie.
Well, I wasn't gonna read the whole thing. I was just gonna read the main. Crozet Newtown Associates LLC, an application to amend the current zoning proffers on Barnes lumber site to allow for certain commercial uses, including independent offices and existing structures, laboratories, research and development, experimental testing, and temporary construction uses. That's kind of, I have to read the whole thing.
Well, and so I'm gonna keep reading.
Oh, okay,
That's
go ahead. Go ahead.
You know, again, the resolution goes on to just talk about, we understand that the proper manner request has been generated in response to a request by a local technology company who'd like to relocate on the former Barnes lumber property. Current proffer does not allow these types of activities, and this proper manner would enable these types of activities, and therefore allow the company to relocate Barnes. It goes on to say the Crozet master plan identifies redevelopment of the downtown Crozet, including former Barnes lumber, as a priority area for focus improvements in the Crozet growth area, and this project includes infill/new business development in the downtown priority area. And it sort of finishes with, therefore be it resolved, the CCA fully supports the approval of this proper amendment request and encourages staff, the planning commission, and the board of supervisors to move forward quickly with approving this project. Again, I would stress that just because this use is being changed and we're supporting that, you know, it doesn't change any of the additional, you know, phase 1 rezoning, phase 2 rezoning, site plan approval process, all, you know, all the normal.
Well, no, there is a phase 2 rezoning.
Excuse me?
We're rezoning the whole, they were approving rezoning of the whole parcel, it's not separating it phase.
Correct. We're approving, we're encouraging planning commission and board of supervisors.
Right.
This isn't a rezoning, this is just a change in the uses that are allowed, so
Yes.
just having a.
It's a proper modification.
But it doesn't tell you that.
Yeah,
correct.
Which, I think the only, to be respectful of what Dan had said, BD, you know, even in the deed resolved section, but we use the word fully originally, I think somewhere in there to allow for our concern for the buffer areas and the greenways, that continue to be a consideration for future developers. Would be the one thing that I would throw into that.
I would say we've already done that, that's already,
I just make that as a recommendation for it to be
I'm
supported
just
by
saying,
our
I suggest we don't make it a recommendation here, because we've already done it. So,
That's for a phase.
What is
I don't care one way or the other, but I wouldn't say.
Yeah.
Other discussion on that?
Move to approve.
Second.
Discussion, any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Me.
Yeah, we'll change, you guys use here and use form, disclose, you got that? Yeah. Okay, thank you. Again, thanks. everybody.
Yeah, thank you all. I think excellent comments, and I'm happy to follow up on the visual for the modular system. I'll send it to Dave, and he can make that available for.
Yeah, and that'll get posted to the Crozet community website. This resolution and the other stuff is already up there on the Crozet community website.
And it'll be illustrative. It won't be the exact of what, but it's, you know, the product literature for the system that we're looking at, just so that there's an image and people have a sense of what that is. without any other, I think we may make a quick exit left if that's.
Great, thanks.
All right.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you all for your time.
And again, the last thing I'd say before we move on is,
Oh, that's the end of the dark party this year?
This conversation as far as buffer areas and such will continue as the permanent rezoning is happening on this site, so. Anyway, thank you for all those comments. Sorry.
I just wanted to ask Bill, do you know for, I assume the planning commission or the board will get a staff report?
It either went out late this afternoon or it's going out tomorrow morning.
Okay, so this won't be included in.
Won't be in the packet, but if you send it to me, it will get to all the planning commissioners and board members.
The next item we had this evening is another topic that we've discussed on a number of occasions. And Wayne was from county staff was here last meeting, 2 meetings ago. Last meeting. Yeah. Talking about this issue of net versus gross density calculations and how while the comprehensive plan and the master plan essentially deals with zoning approvals and coming up with numbers of allowed units based on, if you will, net density, i.e. after, not the gross parcel acreage, but after you remove green spaces, critical slopes, other critical areas, pursuant to the zoning ordinance, those calculations are made based on the gross area. And again, maybe Commissioner Moore will jump in again with another example where we've seen that in Crozet. I think we've talked about that a number of times, and so a couple of us tried to, I think at the last meeting, people generally talked about putting together a resolution where we would encourage staff and the planning commission and the board of supervisors to relook at the current policy where how those calculations are done pursuant to the comprehensive plan versus pursuant to zoning are done, and try to harmonize them, i.e. and make them more in line with the comprehensive plan mechanics rather than the gross density determinations. There's a draft resolution along those lines that's been circulated. Again, that was circulated today, so I guess I want to just take a few minutes and let everybody have a chance to make sure they look at that before we talk further. So I'm just take about a 2-minute break here and give you guys a chance to look. There's other copies of this over on the table if anybody else is interested.
The comprehensive plan numbers need to be revised down to accommodate this recommendation. If they are, then we should include that in the document. That's one thing.
When you say with the comprehensive plan numbers,
Total, I mean, those numbers would have to come down. No.
and when you say the numbers,
So in
the
other words, when you
density,
talk about available net versus gross areas,
right,
so the current plan's probably got numbers based upon gross acreage, whereas if we revise it to just net acreage, then that's going to be less development. Therefore, those total numbers would also need to be adjusted accordingly, right?
oh, you're saying the total number of units that would be allowed to be developed in.
Well, or our growth, our build
projected population.
projected population. In other words, if you say we have 20 acres and 100 people per acre, well, those 20 acres, only 10 are developable. Well, now instead of having, 2,000 people, we have 1,000.
So
we
I
have
think-
to adjust the.
I think the short answer is no, because the comprehensive plan numbers are based on the net.
Buildable
it's net-
areas, buildable.
Right, net methodology.
Right.
It's the zoning ordinance that uses gross. So all the estimates within the comprehensive plan are consistent with this net methodology, meaning that.
Oh, so the numbers that we have now in the comprehensive
Yes.
plan is based on net, not
Yes.
on gross.
Remember she was talking about like a place that might be a parking lot, how do you really look at that? Because it could be built on eventually, even though it's like a parking lot now versus, I think that,
Well, I'm just thinking about like, right, so you have a lot of property that would ordinarily accommodate X, but you really can't build on all of this, so you can only accommodate Y. And therefore, the total number should be reflective of the Y factor, not the X factor.
Yeah, and again, what this is suggesting is that the methodology employed in the comprehensive plan, which is all based on net acreage.
Net development.
Correct. That methodology be the one that's used when you're looking at by right developments pursuant to the zoning ordinance.
Okay, that's it.
Which right now is, if you're doing a by right development in Crozet, you can look at the gross acreage and calculate your number of units, even if, 9 out of 10 acres is floodplain, you still get a gross
I
number.
was just trying to make sure that those numbers are in line.
I have an issue with this. It's not, I approve it, but I think there's a better solution here. First of all, this is going to make Crozet even a wealthier community than it is now, which I'm not happy about. Because builders are going to put fewer houses on the lot, you're going to raise the price of this house. But the other thing is, we're acting as if there are two alternatives. We either use net or we use gross. There is a way going in between. For example, if you have a nice development and there's a place in the middle that would be a great park, so you make it into a park, does that, and that's not buildable, let's say. Would you be encouraged to do that? Either way. So my sense is, I would prefer to see a compromise where you would say no more than 20% addition, or a small addition for unbuildable land.
Well, that's why you can rezone, apply for rezoning, and go through the process, right?
No.
this is more about by right,
Yeah.
isn't it? Isn't it
By right,
similar to-
well-
Because isn't that where the problem stems from, is,
That's a serious problem.
That by
By right.
right, they're looking at the zoning ordinance and that methodology.
Yeah.
Correct.
what I like in here is that you kept, that in the second paragraph, developments can create a host of subsequent issues, runoff, parking, traffic, visual impacts, and especially not to be in keeping with surrounding development. To me, that is crucial, because I think that's why there's such an outcry for your situation, is that you're not like massive apartments right next to big old houses that just, in our master plan, we are trying to be sensitive to what's already there and not, and your example too, we were talking about Hilltop. We have pushed for keeping a commercial downtown center, but with buffers that make it a little bit easier transition. And I think that Milestone has been really pretty receptive to that. And I mean, that's what we try to do here, is try to make things so that they're more livable and not so jarring, and that they stay in the scale and the sense of the community in some way or another. So, I mean, to me, I like that you've got that in there, and to me, that's like the most important part of this, is that you know, and I don't know, do you say in here, it was such a quick read for me, but do you say in here that that somehow this should marry what our master plan ideals are, or what the ideals from the master plan is?
Well, when it talks about the master plans all come from the comprehensive plan, and are all
So
consistent
they're
with the
tied.
comprehensive plan,
Okay.
so, essentially, saying comprehensive plan, I think is shorthand for
Okay,
saying
that's
in all
cool.
the master
Yeah.
plans, we can be clear to that. And, Phil, to your point, I think it's up to the group to decide, do we want to make a specific recommendation that we think they should calculate it as net? Or, an alternative to that is, what we're really asking for is to have staff in the county revisit the way it's being done and to look at the differences between the two methodologies and come up with,
We could give them another 10%.
Exactly, it's.
My sense is, if somebody has a 10-acre lot, 10-acre plot, and whatever the zoning is, let's put 20 units on there, and 2 of the acres are, you can't really build on for some reason, all the whereases here are not addressing the thing. We're addressing the people who are taking advantage of the growth and building way over what they never. So that's all I'm saying.
Right, where there were situations where there was significant amounts
Yeah.
of undevelopable land that resulted in then really high densities in the remaining parcel. And so again, I agree that, we could, if we chose, to tweak this to.
I'm not making an offer for that.
Okay.
I'm fine.
I think the goal is to just get the board to, it really is more of a board
Yeah.
issue for the
Get
planning
their
commission, to get their
attention.
attention to look
Yeah.
at it, because I
It
think
can
you're
still be,
right.
it can still be reviewed at any
Yeah,
time.
there are situations where it's very minimal, the impact it has. Then
Not
there's
the way it
situations
is,
where
that's
it's,
the beginning.
yeah, it's
For
huge,
the
and
most
it's
part.
not being attention. So I think that's something the board can take up as part of their discussion, is not to say no to all of it, but maybe when there's some threshold where it.
That's what your file zoning appeal, any of that stuff, ordinance amendment, that's what you're asking for anyway, so that would be heard specifically.
And the other
Case by
CCAs
case.
are doing something similar. One.
So Ravenna has sent a letter to the Board of Supervisors and the Planning Commission, I think, and staff, similar to this. Within the last month, I literally just got a copy here, probably yesterday. I will circulate that. It's very similar to this, where they're essentially generally calling for, this issue to be relooked at.
And paralleling the comprehensive plan, which is all we're
Yes.
asking, right?
Yeah.
That's all we're doing.
Right.
I think reasonable. And we're at the end of the process.
If somebody bought a piece of property with the understanding that they want that piece of property because they put 25 units on it, now we're amending what they can do, that may.
That's gonna be an
That's gonna
issue.
be a big issue.
I mean, it's going, there are people who will look at it as like your down zoning properties,
Well,
without
it's just,
saying it, so.
it just gets back to the whole profit thing that came down on our head.
Well, it's just, I mean, it's just, it's just something that if the group feels that they want the board to consider it, certainly there'll be people who feel like, hey, I bought this property with the assumption that I could do this, so that would be something they'll have that opportunity to express that to the board as well.
Take my picture.
Yeah, and to be clear, just based on what you said, we're not doing anything. We're making a recommendation to the
Right.
planning commission
It is a
board
problem.
that
I mean,
they change their methodology. Again, mostly just so people clear what we are doing here. It's not our decision to make.
Motion to accept is written.
You just made one, I think.
Second.
I'll second it. Second. Any other discussion? No other discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? None. Thank you, everybody. Yes, anything else on that? Moving on to the next one, John was kind enough to attend a all-chair CAC meeting last week.
Yeah, last Thursday.
That was convened to talk specifically about some things that we talked about before, that is the new Proffer amendments and the potential changes in public meeting formats. I wasn't able to attend. So, John, you want to give a little update as to sort of what was discussed and where that'll end up?
Yeah, I do, and I'll try to be quick about it because as with their habit, slightly behind time here. The big takeaway is all of the CACs are in agreement that our highest priority with this stuff is not moving public meetings on projects away from the CACs, and county staff agrees that there can be enough training provided to CACs that we can conduct our business as we usually do without running afoul of the law and getting the county sued. So that, I think, is what we wanted to see happen when we talked about it the last time. The county staff agrees with us. Again, just to be brief, the second takeaway is this is going to be discussed by the board on their February meeting. Jenny can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe they said February. And so at that point, the lawyer will have, the county lawyer will have a specific set of guidelines to present to the board and discuss with the board for feedback, which will then be revised by staff and passed out to CACs. So we can just kind of forget about it for a few months, happily enough. And just to kind of briefly go over what the county lawyer is suggesting our way forward is going to be, the way he put it was, we're just going to play Jeopardy with them from now on, and we'll phrase everything as a question.
Say that again?
Well, we're phrasing things as a question from now on. So some examples are, how are you going to address blah, 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 rather than, have you considered address, you know, instead of us telling them how to address something, we're going to ask them how they're planning to address something. So it's a small change. So
It's like asking when they stop eating their wife.
well, yeah, we recommend that they stop eating their wife, but we can ask them how they feel about it. So, yeah, that's the new world order for how that goes. And again, we'll know more in February, or after the board meets in February.
Can you go back to why we did this? What's the issue?
Well, they passed a law originally that has with home builders that is more aimed at larger fast-growing areas like Northern Virginia or the Tidewater.
And the consequence of the net law says?
We can no longer, and not just us, but the Board of Supervisors, the Planning Commission, unreasonable suggestions is, I believe, the key phrase.
And
it relates to proffers on residential, proffers on residential developments. So commercial is in effect. For, yeah.
Can't ask for schools or parks or anything like that.
Yeah, like, for instance.
But it not only restricts what the county can ask for formally in proffers, it also restricts sort of how you conduct meetings, that even verbal suggestions of certain things can be in violation of this new state law. And so the county was now reacting to, okay, how do we implement this? And one of the ways that they were considering implementing it was saying, well, gee, maybe we shouldn't have developers presenting in front of CACs, so we don't go say something stupid. And I think where they got to, based on a number of people's suggestions, was, well, now, it still makes sense to developers, you know, to present in front of CACs, just like happened an hour ago. Maybe CACs and other county employees just need some more training about, you know, how do we conduct ourselves to not go foul of
It basically comes down to just being a little bit more careful about what we say when we're talking about developers and residential projects or asking for projects.
Yeah. And as John said, I actually just late today, Emily from the county sent out some meeting minutes from the meeting that I think in more detail, you know, essentially repeats what John just said. I'll circulate that to everyone. But yeah, I think one of the one of the action items that the county took, what they're intending to do is, again, do some training for us, both about the format of the public meetings as well as, you know, suggestions as to how to deal with that and not get sideways with the.
Proper function.
I hope it doesn't come to that.
I don't know.
No, but basically, I think we're probably gonna get a list of ways to phrase what we've previously been phrasing over the long.
I think some of the preliminary training that the planning commission's gotten were scenarios, and, you know, where you might say something that, you know, they are still trying to figure out to what extent, you know, something could be implied. And so I thought it was really helpful that some of the trainings we got were like a block situation, and then scenarios of what would be something they would not encourage you to say, and what would, that was really helpful, because from that you can sort of apply that to many different situations. So I think the training component is, you know, a really big piece that we'll get from legal. And then I think, at least from my perspective, when it was heard that trying to keep those meetings at the CCAC, or the CACs in general would be more helpful, because you'll have staff present when it's a community meeting, and you'll have, I'll be here, Dave will be here, and General will be here, which he's not in the board meeting like tonight, and we can help that as well, and that would be safer than pulling them away from the meetings. And for those CACs that were struggling with having the 4 community meetings in one meeting, they would just offer them that solution to be a little more flexible, or pull some of those meetings away that might make more sense, or maybe that helps the neighbors attend by having it on another night. So if they could identify those would be pulled, but not a sweeping action that would pull all community meetings away from the CAC setting. Did you get that?
Yeah.
Because that's what we were told last night, so.
Yeah.
Same thing. They were just trying to get me to be quiet.
So, yeah.
Just a question. From the discussions that you had at the meeting that you went to, as I go back about 2 months ago when we talked about, when the CCAC discussed this, it seemed that the new law tightens down what you as representatives of the county can say, but doesn't do anything to what those of us who are citizens can say. And so it seems to me that one of the roles that CCAC needs to play is to be more active in soliciting citizens to come and say the things that you can't. that you sit with a certain disadvantage because you sit at the table, that those of us who don't sit at the table don't have, and that we need to be mouthy.
Yeah, I agree. And, you know, hopefully that's one of the unintended consequences of this thing, this new thing, is it will encourage us to encourage citizen involvement. As you said.
Yeah, when someone asks a question, you can jump on top of it.
Well, we can give you some index cards, Rick, with some notes.
Yeah, it's sort of, it's a crazy situation that it's, you know, evolved this way, but, you know,
We're still feeling
what we do here. When we get our more formal training, that was the first thing I thought about as this whole issue came up, is just, well, we all just need to have our citizen who's willing and able to voice what we really want to ask, or in the way we want to ask, so.
Had the same purges and then every meeting always bring up.
And did the attorney in any way suggest that the county was going to fight the new law?
No. I mean, maybe an association.
Yeah, there's an association of counties who are very actively trying to work with the legislature to have this amended, and, you know, I don't know about repealed outright, but amend to deal with some of these issues, so.
Make it more usable, no, because it's probably not gonna get repealed, but you know, they're trying to tweak it to make it better. So it's not the county, it's not just Albemarle County, but Development Association of Counties who are all dealing with this right now.
That's what I was trying to get at about fighting it, was
But in the meantime,
collectively fight it with the
in
other
the
counties.
meantime, I think Alamo County is trying to comply and
Sure.
trying hard not to be the case that's gonna go to court, that they're gonna have to spend a ton of money and
They want
effort
somebody else to do
defending.
that. And other counties have just completely stopped accepting applications until they can figure out what to do, which, you know, I'm glad that that's not the approach that Albemarle's taking. I can't speak to, you know, all the ins and outs of the new legislation, but I've been to a recent planning commissioner training that was really intensive over several months, and one of the gentlemen that taught that course, I mean, his wealth of knowledge is amazing, and he explained to us that his interpretation of what's happened is that some of the groups that were lobbying to have some of the proper change, that potentially the action was much more sweeping and maybe some unintended consequences occurred. So that it was very drastic, and maybe that wasn't all that some of these groups intended to have happen, because maybe there is something, maybe proffers were perceived as really, really high in some locations for a single family detached home, and that needed to be addressed, but a developer might still like the right to say, hey, you know, I would like to build this thing, you know, or share this park, and, you know, it wouldn't just be for my neighborhood, and the county legally can't even accept that at this point. And so, I think in some ways it isn't what was intended, or at least some people are seeing it that way. And so what this, our trainer told us at our training was that, you know, there's action that's being taken, and, you know, it would be, I mean, something to fix back something like this that happened takes time. But I think there's a process in motion that we'll see some sort of change that will bring us back to a place that I hope might be a middle ground, where proffers per unit are more reasonable, but you know, there are so many constraints that, you know, a developer can't offer something they'd like to offer that they see as a benefit for the community, and the county legally can't accept it. And I don't think that's what was intended. So the indication I got from this individual, who seems to know a lot about a lot of things, was that we will see changes. But in the meantime, we need to figure out how to operate under the current legislation.
So just as a follow-up question, would it be beneficial for citizens to suggest that our county accept no applications whatsoever as a way to pressure the county into becoming very active with the Association of Counties to see that this happens? Because in the long run, we don't want to see no applications. But if the home builders start to understand that the citizens are going to rise up, we might be able to get something that's more middle ground quicker.
I think the county's on board already. I think more effective in terms of citizen action would be letters to your newly elected representative to Richmond saying that this is a real problem. You don't want the county to have to stop accepting, you know, applications, and this law needs to be fixed. You know, email, call, a letter to that guy is a much more effective pressure to getting the solution and to the county who is already on board with getting the solution.
I just have to add that as county staff, this is awkward for us too. I mean, we're watching the plans, we're watching what comes in, and we're advocating for the comp plan, and we're advocating for, you know, open space and parks, and we're struggling too with exactly how to move forward with this, because there's still a lot of work to be done.
So anyway, I'd say stay tuned. I'm sure this will be continued. Any other discussion on that? Are we good? So the last bit, and again, this is sort of a continued discussion we've had over the last couple of meetings, was to look at, you know, we have these different focus areas. We've often said, man, we never really get time to talk about, you know, and to debate what's important, what should we be focusing on. So I was trying to set aside some time at each meeting to do a little bit of that. I think at the last meeting we picked sort of 3 areas: parks and green spaces, economic development, and schools, and said, hey, you know, do we want to think about what would be our priorities for this CCAC in 2017 and the next CCAC in each of these areas. I don't know, if you guys want to talk about, just maybe start with Parks and Green Space a little bit?
Yeah, so Phil and I chatted a bit about this, and it's interesting that Dan showed up tonight, because he certainly can weigh in on this. And what Phil and I talked about was that probably a good place to start with our area is to obviously go back to the master plan and see what's listed there, and actually, at future meetings, bring in some folks from the county, for instance, Dan, who can update us all where we are with current trails in the area, and also trails that they hope to put in over the next few years. I'd love to hear more about what mechanism is in place, and maybe all of us, what mechanism is in place now to try to get developers to allocate green areas, and you mentioned it, so it's really, so bring in speakers, that would be one thing. I certainly can talk about Crozet Park. Dan and others can talk about some of the county parks. Another thing would be updating us to what the current environmental policies are for things like dark skies or view sheds. There's lots of policies we kind of talk about, but I honestly don't know what all they are when there are developments and talk about building. So that would be someone else that could come in and help us understand some of the policies. And then I guess the other thing would be just to turn it back to you guys and try to understand what you would like to learn about parks and green spaces in Crozet, and what you think we should focus on.
In fact, if you look at the Crozet master plan, starting at page 78, you see a very elaborate, beautifully stated plan. Unfortunately, none of it has been implemented yet. So I think Dan and his staff have worked very hard to get to a pretty good place, considering what they propose and what money is available for parks and green space.
If I could, I can say this really quickly because I was asked to do a summary of everything that we've accomplished this year for a report that goes out. And 2016 has been an awkward year in a lot of ways, but the accomplishments we've made with these park and green space acquisitions and moving forward have been pretty remarkable. Unfortunately, you're not seeing a whole lot of it, and you know, we've got the master plan we've been working on, but we have bits and pieces of it. And until we have it all tied together, you're not going to see it because it's not contiguous. But just real quickly, the big piece, Westlake, the Licking Hole Basin dedication, that was done. That was something that we've been watching for 6 years or more. We've got, well, the culvert, you know, we worked through some things that are really going to start, you're going to start seeing. But just recently, we've started putting signs up, the regulation signs, in the areas that we have a contiguous system. And we're reluctant to put signs or even bring people to know what's there until it's really there, until it's fully there. But we're confident that we're moving forward. I just have to say, on behalf of the staff and the community at large, the Crozet Trails crew and this community is a remarkable group to work with. And I go to all the other communities around. I'm going to the southern urban area tomorrow. And I keep saying, why can't we franchise? You know, why can't we start this and do this somewhere else? But I just want to say at the end of the year, you know, we've accomplished a lot. We've still got a lot to do. But you guys, that organization and the community has been remarkable. I will have to say, regarding the proffers, a really interesting thing has happened just recently, and it's happened with a couple of developers. And maybe they've seen how difficult it is for us to put these things on the ground now. But
I met with a couple of builders who have sat with the plans and said, how can we make this happen? Because now, when I first started doing this years ago, the development community didn't get it, and they weren't supportive of this. But they're realizing now that the people who are buying their houses in these neighborhoods want a walkable, bikeable community. and the vacuum there, I mean, they're saying, well, how can we make these connections? Looking at the master plan. And I'm working with a couple of them where they're actually building it, putting it on the ground for public use, and eventually it'll be turned over for us. And that's remarkable. And it's pretty amazing. And I think this upcoming year, I'm really hopeful and encouraged to say that we're going to start seeing a lot more significantly on the ground.
So Dan, could we invite you back to give a?
Absolutely, and I'll bring maps, because I really can't talk without maps.
That'd be great. As Dan was saying, today I happened to run into a developer at a lunchroom, and he was saying, well, you know, I'm going to acquire this property. As soon as I acquire it, you guys can put your trail through it.
It's a major shift.
And the thing is, well, we can't put the trail through it. We can't build any bridges there because it really isn't. It really still is owned by another person who wouldn't want it. So part of the frustration is, as you guys are very aware of, we have places where there's a developer who's enthusiastic, and then they come to it at the end of their development, and then there's this piece of land where we have to wait for it to turn over. And I think on the eastern side of town, we're going to have a pretty complete, comprehensive green space.
I sit down at my desk in the office because I'm looking at the whole county with this regard, and I sit down sometimes and go, oh my God, will we ever make all these links and connections? Will we have bits and pieces all on the rivers and it's slowly coming together. And again, as more folks in the community recognize the value, it's starting to beg itself, and it's really encouraging.
We still do need a footpath from Charlottesville to Crozet.
Well, that was the other thing I wanted to say. The Three Knots Trail, the Three Knots Trail group really actually was sort of disbanded, fell out of action a couple of years ago. We had a group that was actively looking, actually when the economy went bad and the price of fuel went up, everybody wanted to ride bikes between Crozet and Charlottesville. Well, they've come back, and a lot of it has to do with the tunnel as a destination. And so we're going to start meeting again and looking at routes. And actually, it was pretty encouraging the number of property owners between Crozet and Charlottesville that were willing to work with us on putting an off-road alternative route. And,
so you've gone that far to actually talk to, designate a...
Oh, yeah.
route?
Oh, we walked it and talked to folks and mapped it and everything. But that was before it's in the comp plan now, which is the tool, that's the vehicle for us to be able to actually really work with. Well, we could with proffers, but that's, it's a new world.
Well, I think your guys' suggestion is great, and I think it's great that you're here to have you come back and give us sort of
I'll bring
an
maps.
overview of, where you are and your view of, what are the critical next things that if people want to get involved or that we might be able to help advance. I guess the other thing I'd ask is, part of this exercise about talking about priorities, I think is good in that, we're talking about a master plan update in the next year. And I think it helps us be thinking about, do we want to be, what are our priorities that might find their way into our implementation section of the master plan to become the next things that we say are priorities. I think if you're willing, it'd be great.
And I'd like to leave you all with a seed or thought between the next time we get together is that Western Park, we're going to have to revisit that. There was a master plan for that, but we need to revisit it. There's been changes out there. What can and what, as we know the site, that's going to change. But to think about not only the trails and the connections, but we're also revisiting, well, Mint Springs Park is pretty much Mint Springs Park. But we are looking at other recreation destinations and what is emerging as desirable in the community you know, that we don't know about. And that's something that, and also Crozet Park is a great example of.
Well, and that's interesting because I've often wondered why, you know, I don't know what the status is of this western park that I read about, but then I think, well, why would you duplicate some of the same amenities that are going to be at Crozet Park? Why not put the focus at Crozet Park, which is community owned, not county, but still, it's
And that's been from the very beginning, has been part of the discussion of how Western Park doesn't become a separate, a duplicate.
Sure.
But has in some capacity a way of tying Crozet Park together, because we really want to integrate bring the community to that park. I mean, for example, we inherited a public garden there. There's a vegetable garden there. That's the first one that we are working with, and it's a great idea. It may be amenities like that that currently aren't at Crozet Park.
Is that an old trail? Is that the
Yeah.
space?
Yeah, that big space.
Yeah, they have
Great
tons
space.
of pumpkins and stuff. Yeah. But anyway.
Do they have a projection of how much capacity Crozet Park has? Like, if we look at our build out, right, and the number of residents, how many people could reasonably?
I've never seen a number, although I know what we talk a lot about is parking. I mean, obviously, we've maxed it at this point. We have overflow parking in the field. But that's a really great
question.
question.
About this western part, I've not heard of either.
Yeah. No, this is a great question, and it's something
At some
that,
point, we're gonna be at capacity at one, we're
Absolutely.
gonna need an overflow.
Right. Well, actually, this is a critical question for us, because as we talk about doing a facility expansion and adding other amenities at Crozet Park, we're also looking at the population around it and how it's growing. And, you know, what we build, how will that be fitting, what, you know, how big of a facility should we build? And so same things that I think Dan is also talking about.
And that's why the bikeability and the walkability, you know, to both of the parks is so important.
Yeah.
Because I see people driving, you know, over to the park where they could usually walk.
And on that front, the one thing that I was going to ask or suggest that we maybe add to a priority list, and this is a very specific thing, we should wrap this into a broader discussion, but I think we have a really good opportunity as Milestone develops phase one. Phase two is sitting there. Phase two will be years developing. But we have a green space corridor sitting there right now that's just waiting for a trail to be built. Now maybe it's not a permanent trail. You know, maybe it's something that, you know, we joked about getting Drew out there with his bobcat and doesn't make one. But I think Milestone is amenable to that. I mean, I think they're very amenable to do something in an interim, recognizing that it might move and it might change once they get with their, you know,
Very
fund
easy to
deals.
do, it's good mowing more than anything.
And so anyway, I would encourage us to try to work with you guys and Milestone to figure out, can we make that happen, that connection to the park and the rest of the trail system and the new downtown area.
We did that with Foothills,
Yeah.
where we realized that that land was going to lay fallow for years and years. We got an interim easement, and knowing that 5 years is a kid's childhood, that they could be using that area. And that's a great suggestion.
I wanted to get out there with Drew and the bobcat this summer. I was proud of myself.
That's all we have.
Anything else?
I heard you mention dark night skies, and that is like something that's so important, I think, as we do get more and more people out here and more parking lots, to really work toward, and maybe we have to ask our developers in question form, but there's nothing that drives me more crazy than to have just like big floodlight lights all over these big empty parking lots. At least have them motion detected or something. Like, I live on St. George Avenue, and the church's parking lot, it is so bright out there now that, I mean, if I don't, like, blinds,
Those lights are on all the time?
all the time, and why? You know, if somebody comes out there and they're parking and they're causing trouble, I go out there with my flashlight and go, hey, what are you doing? You don't need, it's not like why do you have that? It just drives me nuts. I used to be able to see the sky, see the stars. And then more development and more houses we get out here. And people like to uplight their trees and stuff, which looks pretty and everything, but the more
Now
of
for
the
commercial, I know at the park with our parking lot, we were required to be, what do they call it?
And that's great, but with the
Yeah.
developments
There's a
too,
certain type of,
just to encourage and make people aware of the reason we can't see the Milky Way anymore is because there's too many stupid lights out there. You know?
I'm gonna say one more thing and then we'll shut up. We just had the birthday, I guess, of the dog park. I mean, that's why you're here. I mean, I saw you show up with the excitement, with the desire to have this community dog park and the work that and it was a year ago that we opened it. It took a lot longer than that to put it on the ground, but I was thinking about that, and that's really exciting. That the community, and we were able to partner with what we could to pull that together. And then before I completely shut up, I just want to thank you all for the time that you give to coming out. I go to a lot of community meetings. I look around and say, you know, for the community to come out and gather around making the community the best it is, I think it's really valuable. And yeah, so thanks for that.
thanks, Dan.
Good, thanks. We look forward to seeing you back out here in front of us again, maybe in first quarter sometime. Yeah. So we have 10 minutes left. I think schools, maybe we will hold for next time. Are you guys game to talk economic development for 10 minutes, or shall we do that next time?
10 minutes on economic development.
That's what I'm saying. Do we want to even start, or do we want to wait and table that for next time? Happy to do either.
If economic development is going to take longer, we can cover schools that fast, because we have a pretty short list of the things that,
Should we do that?
Yeah, that's fine.
That's a good idea. Great.
And Beth and I were in touch, and with Dean, and Beth's not able to make it today, and we really just came up with a couple of items that we thought would be good to cover regularly with schools, and one is just an annual invitation to our school board representatives, just, you know, to hear our concerns, for them to give us updates, and, you know, just as that forum for the interaction with the school board members. We also thought it would be good to be able to provide the fall enrollment updates, so if that's something we could, either representatives could follow up on and just inform the schools, so we can, you know, or I'm sorry, the group, just to, you know, keep posted on where we stand with the Western Feeder schools. And then finally, reaching out to the Albemarle County Public Schools long-range planning committee, just kind of get their updates as well. And one of the ideas we had was, what would be great is when we get these things scheduled, you know, those meetings, CCAC meetings, where we will be having the school board member out or discussing any of these topics, we can make sure that we reach out to the PTOs in all of the Western Feeder schools and make sure that they announce it in their electronic newsletters and everything else. It might, you know, get more people at the meetings and really provide a forum for, you know, more of those parents to actually have that face-to-face time with their school board representatives, just another, or whoever, you know, whichever the representatives are. It might just allow us to better serve that part of the community as well. So those are the main things we were thinking.
If you're gonna have school conversations, you really have to get daycare. If you're gonna have a school conversation, you need daycare. These parents with kids can't make it.
Good point.
Yeah. But you're gonna the same crowd here if you don't offer daycare for parents with kids.
Well, I know the Crozet PTO has I mean, it's Beth, but she reports on what happens at the CCAC meetings at the PTO. So, I mean, it could work both, you know. If it wasn't Beth, who's also on the committee, then it could be someone who is in the audience and could really participate in both directions as a representative. And maybe from Brownsville, too. I don't know if one exists on the Brownsville PTO, so.
both of them.
Roughly once a year, but I think.
Dave
sort
is
of
the
formalizing
local,
that's a great idea.
and Jono, who is the at-large, but happens to live and has a daughter at Western, so he does the investment.
And I really like the idea of having the long-range planning folks.
Yeah.
Attend maybe jointly, because, you know, that's where the rubber meets the road in terms of some of the stuff that we're doing with the master plan. So I think it's a really good idea.
Has this group ever met at the library? Because, you know, the library has,
I usually do.
Yes.
could accommodate kids. They could do their homework, there's activities there, they could have someone working with them, and then the group could be nearby.
That's our normal meeting place, unless we change our meeting date, and then it's a little harder to get that space. Getting
If we
meeting
were there,
space
we
at the
would be getting
library.
kicked out right now.
Yeah,
We were
they'd be
there,
kicking
we
us
would
out
get
right
kicked
now.
out.
This is
our December meeting.
But again, I think we can absolutely talk about it. I think it's a great suggestion when we have these discussions, you know, spend a little effort on making sure there's children in there.
Probably to have somebody be a supervisor for the young kids, but that children's room is a great room. Yeah, somebody
So you're suggesting to just do economic development for the next?
Yeah, I would just suggest maybe if that's good with folks, maybe pick that up next meeting agenda. You
And I
know,
think-
time permitting, I guess, sorry, go ahead.
Last time, these three people felt like were priorities to talk about, and it was a rough idea to sort of pick off a couple at each meeting since we weren't getting through a giant list of them successfully ever. So one suggestion I would have, that came out of some information that's been tweeted tonight and some comments that we've heard from the community, one suggestion I would have is maybe prioritize the idea of having, certain members be the contact point for, you know, certain neighborhoods or quadrants, however it's set up. I know in the safety corps, we just had